what I want to share with you in this video is an incredible system that I've developed for becoming assertive. And this is going to bake assertiveness into who you are as a person. This is what our coaches teach. This is what I teach inside of our Elite Speak program. And we recently trained one of our clients, Pete, to become more assertive in his workplace. And when you become more assertive as a person, the changes that you see are less resentment toward people, fewer misunderstandings, and more respect for who you are as a person, because you're able to lay down the line and stand on your truth with all 10 toes, and people feel that. There's a strength to the person who's able to deploy assertiveness effectively. So we're going to step through several techniques in this video. We've got quite a big whiteboard deck here. If you want us to help you install all of this into your speaking operating system, then click the links below. Okay. So the very first principle that we need to understand about assertiveness is that just because you're not assertive doesn't mean you're weak. It simply means you are untrained. You likely grew up in an environment where your nervous system was probably used to keeping the peace and avoiding tension. Things like avoiding friction or tension or disagreeing with people, emotional escalation, those are things that you have very little experience doing. And so your nervous system adapted to avoiding those scenarios because those scenarios are uncertain and they represent danger. And so becoming assertive is just like any other communication skill that we teach. If you're not good at it, you simply haven't practiced it enough or had the right guidance. And so I want you to understand that you simply haven't trained assertiveness. It's like writing with your non-dominant hand. It's shaky, it's awkward, it's avoidable until you train it. And then it becomes legible, it becomes understandable, and it becomes an effective way to communicate. And so when we start talking about effective communication, it means confronting a lot of the parts of ourselves and the way that we interact with people that make us very uncomfortable. In the way that assertiveness often makes a person feel uncomfortable is when assertiveness makes a person feel mean. For example, if I start saying something like, John, I understand that going to that event with you means a lot tonight, but I'm still not going tonight. Let's say John invited me out. To a lot of us, that's going to feel cold. It's going to feel mean, laying down our standard. But what happens is we're just really speaking clearly. We're speaking cleanly. And our body often interprets that specificity, that cleanness. And this is a huge point we're going to talk about later. We interpret specificity like shooting an arrow at another person or stabbing them. It makes us feel guilt. And what I want you to understand is that feeling, that sharpness that you're going to start to feel when you become more assertive, when you feel like the other person might say something that's going to challenge you and make you accountable for standing on your truth, that's simply an alarm bell going off. That's your old nervous system that's activating. It's not meanness. It's not coldness. Now, there are ways to say things to be more diplomatic and more delicate depending on the person and their personality you're speaking to, but that's a very advanced version of communication and assertiveness. That's not default assertiveness. Default assertiveness is learning to be gentle, firm, and consistent. Gentle, firm, and consistent. Here's how I want you to think about this. This is an analogy that we use all the time. We have the sun and the wind. And when assertiveness is very rare in a person, and it's very intense, and it's forcing, and it's pushing, that's like the wind. You're blowing against someone, and that person, you can see a man down here with a cloak. That force, that aggression is typically not part of who a person is. It's outside the general pattern of their behavior. And what assertiveness is like the sun. Remember those words we talked about? Gentle, firm, and consistent. And there's an old Aesop's fables that this analogy is based off of, where the wind is blowing and trying to take a person's coat off. And it's huffing and puffing as hard as it can, and the person is just gripping onto the coat because all that aggression is causing the person to cling on tighter. versus the sun, which just stands in the sky and it just beams, it just smiles, and it makes the person sweat, and they remove the coat by themselves. And that's what assertiveness is. It's not being disrespectful. It's not trying to push too hard or force another person to do what you want. It's just being comfortable holding your ground. And so the first way that I want you to start thinking about assertiveness, this is principle number one with becoming assertive. Assertiveness is specificity, not volume. So if we think of the wind as being very loud, very forceful, what assertiveness is specificity. That's the sun. It's a sharp ray beaming down on a person. So let's say I wanted to say to a person, I want you to be more respectful sometimes. More respectful, what does that mean? Sometimes, what does that mean? An example with specificity would be, I really need you to stop making jokes about me in front of other people. You're defining a very specific action in a very specific context. It's not more respectful. It's not sometimes. It's no jokes about me in front of other people. It's a bit extreme. If you can't handle that, maybe a bit too sensitive. But that laying down the truth with specificity is so important. People who are less assertive generally are people who communicate in very vague, very loose terms. Using specificity with more detail and more context is going to make you more assertive. Another example of this might be, when you raise your tone at the end of your sentences, it makes me feel like you're angry. Now, that may or may not be true, but that's how I'm interpreting it. So once again, it's assertive because it has specificity, right? That's the first big principle in learning to be more assertive, is you just don't have enough detail. You're not calling out specific actions that make you upset or that you want to change, and you're not defining the change that you want and what you want them to do. So here's what I mean. Here's the template for this. When you do X, I feel Y and I need Z. When you do X, I feel Y and I need Z. When you call me after 11 at night, I feel like it disrupts my sleep and I feel drained the next day. I need you to call before 10, and if it's late, please text instead. When you interrupt me when I'm talking, I feel dismissed and I lose my train of thought. I need you to help me finish my sentences before you respond. And if this keeps happening, I'm going to pause the conversation and come back to it later. So once again, when you do X, I feel Y and I need Z. So I'll give you an example from one of our recent clients. When you don't deliver the financial material on time, I feel stressed and I can't communicate with my team effectively, and I need you to send this to me on a timely manner on the date that we agreed on so that we can take the best of both of our brains and actually complete this project together. Trying to leave out as many details as possible, but that's the 10,000-foot summary. When you do X, I feel Y and I need Z. And what this is going to help you to do is become comfortable with communicating assertiveness within a structure. And there's another way that you can do this in a very simple way. And I call this the broken record. So at the bottom it says, I don't know if you can see this, it says, repeat the same sentence plus no new material. So let's say, for example, someone invites you out to an event. They say, just come, everyone is expecting you. What you would say is, I'm not coming tonight. Why not? Tell me why. I'm just not coming tonight. What? Why are you being this way? I'm not coming tonight. So it's being okay with not introducing any new material and repeating the same sentence. I'm not coming tonight. We're not doing this. We're not doing this. It's very similar to how a parent would discipline a child. If a parent's being respectful, they might say something like, there's no negotiating on this. There's no negotiating on this. And there may be a little more strength in the tone. There's no negotiating on this. This is the broken record method. It's repeating the same thing with no new material. And there's one last framework I want to give you. And I really want you to be thinking about which one of these frameworks appeals to you that you can take in practice. Don't choose all three, just pick one. This one is called the mirror plus the return. And what the mirror is when someone begins to color their disagreement with a lot of emotion, they become very angry, very emotional, very sad. What you do is you mirror that emotion by acknowledging it with words, and then you return to your boundary. Mirroring and then returning to the boundary. So what this looks like is this. You never care about what I want. Why should I even care about you? Okay, so acknowledging the emotion, mirroring the emotion would be, I can hear that you're very hurt. I can hear that you're very angry. I'm willing to talk about what you want, but I'm not willing to be spoken to like that. So it's mirroring the emotion. It's capturing their emotion with words. You're not entering into the same state. You're not getting angry when they're getting angry, but you're capturing the anger. You sometimes identify what they're after, and then you return to your boundary. So another example might be if someone comes up to you and says, move, get out of the way. John, I understand that you're upset right now. I'm willing to move, but I'm not willing to be spoken to like that. So once again, it's taking the emotion, it's capturing what it is that they want, working toward that with them. I'm willing to move, and then returning to the boundary by talking about what upset you and being willing to stand on that ground. So these are the three most effective techniques that we've created to help people become more assertive. And all you need is one of these frameworks baked into who you are in order for this to influence dramatically the way that you show up professionally and personally. So if you want us to help you practice with this and get those reps in and design scenarios around the communication scenarios that you find challenging, you can click the links below to work with us at Elite Speak. Hope you enjoyed the video.